guys, my name is Chloe and I am your archaeological guide for day 3 of your VBS. So we have a lot of super fun stuff to uncover today, but first we're going to go back and talk about what you learned before. So on day 1, who remembers what you guys learned? Maybe Jesus came as God promised? Good, that's right. So we learned that Jesus came as a little baby to Mary and Joseph. And then on day 2, can anybody guess? We learned about Jesus showing us God's power. Who remembers how he did that? There was some mud involved, mud pies. I don't know if y'all have ever made that, but it's pretty fun. Anyways, Jesus' mud pies were cooler than ours because they healed a blind man. But today we have some really cool stuff to learn about. Before we get into our story, though, I just wanted to ask you guys how you set your table. And you're going to see why this is important later. But I have this handy little map that helps me. Because sometimes it's hard to remember. But first, what you're going to want to do is put a plate in the middle. And then you need your utensils. So I have a spoon, maybe a fork or knife. And then always need a little cup. So, okay. And then I also have a bowl. Now my bowl is filled with some water. And then I also have some bread. Now, for Jesus, in our story, we're going to learn he went to a supper. But he had probably not water, something else. But we're going to use water, and then he had bread. Okay, so today, in our story, we're going to see Jesus does this, but I'm going to show us how. So in old times, they didn't really have pitchers. If they did, they weren't like great. So they normally had some kind of scoop like this, and then they would pour water into each other's cups. And then we also would use these things. So instead of like a pitcher, they were more like a jar or a jug. So this is a water jar, and they're also called water pots, and they're being found all over the world, and they've been being found for many, many years. So archaeologists have actually concluded that some of these jars were found near Jerusalem, and they're really representative of jars that would have been used at the time Jesus was alive. Isn't that crazy how old that is? Fragments of these jars are still being found as recently as 2017, which is, not long ago. And we can see our friends here are uncovering their jars. So, today's story is about a time that Jesus helped his friends. Have you ever helped one of your friends before? There's a couple different ways you can help a friend. So maybe you've picked up something that they dropped, or helped them find something that they lost, anything like that. Anything that you've helped them do to make their day a little bit better. And if you haven't recently, maybe you should go help. Help your mom, help your sibling, help whoever you can around the house. But let's learn about today's story. So today's story is Jesus helped his friends. So one day, Jesus invited his helpers or his disciples to a special supper. This is a super special supper. So when it was time to eat, Jesus and his helpers or his disciples sat at a table, kind of like I'm doing right now. So they probably already had their place settings done. He took some bread and thanked God for it. Then he gave some of the bread to each man. So this is going to be my piece. I'm going to give this bread to you. Then he gave some of the bread to each man. He then took a cup and said, "Thank you to God." Jesus shared the cup with each helper. So they passed their cup around. The helpers or disciples had walked to the supper. The roads were super dusty and their feet had gotten really, really dirty. After the meal, Jesus stood up and poured water into a bowl. He began to wash the dust from his helpers' feet. Then he dried himself with a towel he had tied around himself. When he was finished, Jesus went back to the table to join his helpers. Jesus asked the men, "Do you know what I have done for you? Just as I washed your feet, you should wash one another's feet. Do what I do, serve and help one another." Okay. So today's point of our story was Jesus showed us how to love others. Do you remember how he did that? How did Jesus help his friends serve others? Maybe we should try to do that too. Now, today, to review our Bible verse, who remembers what it was? Yeah? So the Bible verse is, "You will find me when you search for me." Jeremiah 29:13. Okay, so now, today to help us remember that, we're going to do a little bit fun activity. So we're going to stomp every time we say a word. I want you to stomp as loud as you can, but don't make your mom mad. But stomp as loud as you can. I'm going to clap because you can't really see my feet. So I'm going to clap when we do it. But this way, hopefully it'll help us remember our verse. Are you ready? You will find me when you search for me. Jeremiah 29:13. Good job. That was so good. Okay, keep remembering your verse because that's going to be important. And then, so now, we're going to talk about some cool things archaeologists do. So, one thing that they like to do is they uncover all these things, right? They're finding all these artifacts. Well, they have to figure out what we did with those. So, when they found that water jar, they had to figure out what it was used for. So, think about in like a couple thousand years, some archaeologists might uncover this ball and be like, I wonder what they used this for. So, what do you use this ball for? Do you throw it around, kick it around? What do you think an archaeologist might think? If you've never seen this before, what would you do with it? Okay, so in today's story, do you remember why the disciples' feet were so dirty? They had been walking forever. So today's shoes, they kind of cover your whole foot. Look down at your feet right now. Are you wearing shoes? Do you have tennis shoes on? They probably cover most of your foot. In ancient times, tennis shoes looked like this. They were all leather, they had straps on them, and they let a lot of dust in because they didn't have roads like we have roads now. They had dirt. You walked on dirt. So, this wasn't super protecting if you had that, but that was a super nice shoe back in the day. This is what a lot of people had, which is kind of like a flip-flop today, but also not very protecting when you're walking on dirt. So, be thankful for the shoes you have on your feet because there's still some people today that don't have those kind of shoes. So just remember to be praying for missionaries and people like that are trying to help those kinds of people. And finally, to help us review today, so we're going to play a game. I'm going to act out different modes of transportation or ways to get around. You're going to tell me if disciples had that and Jesus had that, or if we just have that now. So are you ready? You got to guess what I'm going to do, okay? Does anybody know what that was? An airplane, that's right. Good job. So do you think the disciples had airplanes? No, probably not. They had to walk. Okay, let's do another one. What was that? A car. Good job. That's so good. So disciples, no, they probably didn't have cars. Let's do another one. Does anybody know what that was? Paddling a boat. Good job. So disciples probably did have that, and Jesus probably got around that way. We know he got around that way a little bit. Let's do one more, and then we'll be done. Can you guess what that was? A horse. So good. Okay, so a lot of times people would ride donkeys. That was like a big thing they did, and horses and stuff. And if they didn't have that, then they would just walk, which is what our disciples did and why their feet were so dirty. Let's do a few review questions now to make sure we really understand. So, we used the word disciple a lot today. What was another word we used for that? What were Jesus and his disciples all doing together? What were they doing when he washed his feet? How did Jesus show his love to his disciples? Jesus showed us how to do what to other people? What did he want us to do? And then finally, finish this statement. So, Jesus showed us how to blank others. So, those are our review questions. So, answer those. Remember to go on the website, answer those so you get your t-shirt. And finally, we are going to unveil our point for today. So, let's go over here and be archaeologists. And that looks like our water jars. Jesus showed us how to love others. And we remember how he did that. Okay, guys, so that was day 3 of the archaeological dig that you guys are doing at Mount Tabor. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you later, Seekers.